Today, I want to talk to you about strengths, specifically CliftonStrengths run by Gallop. These are my favorite strengths. There are tons of personality tests out there, and a lot of them have various kinds of science associated with them, and they lump you into some categories or put you on scales. But I really like Gallup's, it was originally called Strengths Quest, and now they're calling it CliftonStrengths. And really, what it is a way to find out the areas in which you're mostly pretty good, that you gravitate towards, and in many cases that you have worked to nurture and improve. And then how those strengths can be used to make you a happier, more functional person, which is actually where a lot of this work came from, is that Gallup wanted to know if people felt like they were using their strengths in their jobs. Why are you happy at work, or why are you not happy at work? And most of the data comes out that if you are using your strengths on a daily basis, you are a much happier employee, which is fantastic and probably the way life and work definitely should be. So if you have not ever taken the Gallup CliftonStrengths, I strongly recommend it. I think it's actually still pretty cheap, but definitely take it. Let's talk about mine so I can give you a sense of how these work. So there are 34 Gallup strengths. There are a whole bunch of different ones. They fall into 4 approximate categories, and you can actually see essentially all of them from various resources. So there's a lot of different places to look at all 34 strengths and learn all about these and how they work, and there's books that go with them. It's really cool. But what happens when you do that, when you take the Strengths Quest or the CliftonStrengths assessment, is that it runs you through a series of things and then it ranks all of your strengths in order and gives you your top 5. Why your top 5 and not all of them? Because human beings are psychologically wired to look at negative things, and it's a bad idea. Don't do it. So Gallup is really trying to go for positive psychology with the idea that it works better to improve the things you're good at and work with them than try to improve the things you have definite issues with. And I'll talk a little bit more about those later because I actually do have all mine. All right. So these are my top 5 strengths. Some of them, sometimes the strengths are really obvious, sometimes they take a little sort of learning about. So when you get your 5, I strongly recommend looking through them. My number 1 is learner. Have a great desire to learn and want to continuously improve. This describes me to no end. I love to learn new things. I want stuff all the time, and if you tell me something and you don't have the information, I will just go hunt it down. I've been known to take free random online classes pretty much in between all of my free time spaces. And I'm a college professor with a PhD. I mean, I've done nothing but school and then more school, and now I teach school. And what do I do when I'm bored? I go online and I do school. Yeah, so that's my whole thing. Sometimes I just want to learn random stuff. I took a whole double session class on the Beatles music. I know a lot about Beatles music now. But sometimes I want to learn things that are useful to me. So I've also taken some anatomy and physiology and stuff like that, which is more similar to what I teach. All right. Next is analytical for me. It says that you search for reasons and causes and have the ability to think about all the factors that might affect a situation. Another one that describes me perfectly. As a scientist, this is my depth. I always want to know why and how something works, and I go hunting for it. Sometimes this can be very annoying to people, because if you tell me, well, this is why it is, and I can think of 5 other ways it might be, I want to test them all and come up with a specifically good reason and how it all fits together. And can we try all these out? And what if it could be this? And what if it could be that? So analytical is very useful when you need a problem solved, but in the process, sometimes people have trouble with it. Especially when you combine my analytical strength with my next 2 strengths. You'll notice we're going to change color here because my first 2 are strategic thinking. I'm a strategic thinker, but then my next 2 are what are called influencing, which helps you take charge, speak up, and make sure others are heard. I'm not entirely sure about that others part sometimes. So my number 3 is self-assurance, which is feeling confident in your ability to take risks and manage your own lives. So I have an inner compass that gives me certainty in what I do. I am fairly easily I easily come to a decision and I easily stick to it. Now, because I'm analytical and I like to learn, I can change that, but I do it internally and with confidence. I don't worry about other things. This is kind of interesting because I don't fall into certain kinds of psychological traps, which makes me both good and bad as a human being sometimes, because I am, now if you want to get rid of all the things in your house, for instance, I am that person. I'm really good at going through stuff and saying, am I going to keep this? No, let's toss it. And I feel very good about those decisions. When I purchase something or make a decision to purchase something, I tend to feel very confident about that decision, and I don't have a lot of that nervous worry that people do sometimes. Number 4 is command, which is somebody who has presence and takes control of a situation. Again, describes me pretty perfectly. If you've ever heard the term natural leader, I didn't know what that meant for a long time, and then I saw these words and realized what it meant, which is that if nothing else is happening, I jump on something. I go, oh, does that something need to be done? Let me take care of that. I will be glad to organize all of your things. I was once at a wedding in which the planning part of the wedding was pretty open-ended. It was on like a local beach and they didn't have to have everything sorted, and so things were running a little bit late. And when everybody got there, they also really hadn't planned out how they were going to process into from the outside of the beach onto the beach. And my husband was in the wedding, but he was actually already on the other side. I was just standing around being helpful. I suddenly was the event planner. I figured the whole procession out, including the timing. I put everybody in order and I sent them off at points. Yeah, I am that person, which again is great if you need something like that done, but can be problematic if you don't and I just want to do it. I have learned over the years how to control that. And finally, individualization. This one took me the longest to get my head around. It goes under relationship building, which is not an area in which I have a lot of strength. And it notes that they're intrigued with the unique qualities of each person and have a gift of figuring out how different people can work together productively. This is very accurate to me once I kind of got the hang of it, in that I like to notice people as individuals instead of as groups. I do this with my students. I want to know specific things about them. I want to have connections to people that are direct. It's like, oh, you like that thing? I like that thing. And so that's some of the things I like to do. I call that one sort of my saving grace item, because between the self-assurance and command, I will take over a whole thing. But since I care about who you are as an individual and what you're doing, it also allows me to step back and go, now, how are these things affecting these different individuals? And I am very good at creating teams. So I'm helpful with that. I'm also good at realizing I need teams, because I'm good at the take charge part, and I'm not always good at the being nice to other people part. And I need others in those domains to help me out. So those are all of my strengths and how I generally work with them. Let me show you a little bit more about my whole profile, since I do happen to have the entire thing, my little DNA here. And you can see it broken down in all of these ways with all of the numbers. So there's my number 2, my number 1. If I move off of it, you'll notice that my strategic thinking ones, I do have another higher one in strategic. The rest of them are actually a little bit lower down. So if there's 34, anything above 17 and above are the real good ones. And my relationship building ones, you'll notice, are mostly way below that. Where are my lowest ones? Harmony is my lowest. Empathy is not far behind. And let me tell you, working on those two things from a personal perspective is hard for me. It is work to be like, I don't care about how everybody makes everything look, but it's better for me to say, that's not what I'm good at. Let me bring in a person who can help me with that, who can do that part of the job, whereas I can lay out a plan and they can help deal with sort of how people are feeling that plan. I do have even more influencing. I'm both an activator and high on communication. My woo is also in my top half, which is winning others over. So even though I want to command them a little bit more, I do also want them to come to my side. And then my executing, I find it interesting. I have a whole bunch of them, mostly in the lower ones. I'm not so great at getting things done, which is not surprising. With ADHD, my executive functions are problematic. Therefore, my executing items are also somewhat problematic. And my highest ones, arranger, is a key one, interestingly enough, which it makes sense because I do like to put things in order. I just like to do that instead of getting them done. Responsibility, which has been a sort of role in my life. So even though I'm bad at getting things done, I do feel responsible for doing it. And I find it interesting how high belief stands for me, but I think part of that comes with the self-assurance, is that my belief is in whatever system I'm currently working in. Not that it's entirely unchangeable, but that I feel it strongly. Anyway, so I'm very much an influencer. Take it apart like this, with some strategic thinking, some just enough relationship building. You'll notice my other higher ones in relationship building, connectedness, which I think relates to me being a biologist. I love how it all fits together. And relator, which is very much about connecting to smaller groups of people than larger groups, whereas I am, again, not so good at things like the includer. And some of my other higher ones, context. I don't always put things into larger scale perspective incredibly well, and especially not historical perspective. I'll tell you that for sure. My futuristic, you'll notice, is much higher than my context. And so I need other people sometimes to help me with that. Deliberative is another one that is further down. As I noted, I don't take very long to make decisions. And so you can see how these strengths work on my chart. You can think about how your strengths work. You will not get all of these from the first time you do it. If you want all of them, you have to go back and pay Gallop a whole bunch more money. But my number one is learner. My number two is analytical. And I was not going to rest until I knew every single thing about myself as it works out here. But that's fine. I really like this cute little thing with all the colors so I can see in order where they all fall. And there's all of my executive functioning and relationship building way at the end. But hell, if you want a crowd going and you want it done fast and efficiently and you want that information spread to the right spot, I am your gal, and I'm glad to do so. Hope you learned a little something about strengths today.